This is spoilers for Dune: Part 2. If you don't want to hear spoilers about Dune: Part 2, then don't listen to this right now. Listen to it at a point where you do want to hear spoilers, because we're about to talk about the movie open and honestly. Zach, you had a question for me?
Yeah, well, I was just curious what made this a 4-star movie for you? What kept it from being a 4.5 or a 5-star movie? You didn't really have anything negative to say about it in your review. I'm just curious.
Sure. It's a good question. Maybe it's being punished by my opinion of the first.
Yeah,
Do
you
you
compared it to the
dislike the
first a
first?
ton.
It's not that I dislike it. This movie brought me closer to being a fan of the entire thing. I definitely have complaints about the second one, but they're not like huge, like game-changing things. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think they did a good job of making you understand that he is a troubled potential messiah. But I also think a lot of the language in the movie is a little thick at times. I think your average person probably couldn't just jump into this movie and get the most out of it. They'd have to come with some kind of primer or have seen the first one. I think at times there's not enough time. I wasn't fully convinced of everybody's devotion to him. That seemed to happen really fast. I think they visually represented it. I understood that that's what was happening, but also, like you said in the review, like they're skipping large amounts of time. And so it pretty fast between like he drinks the stuff in the room and then all of a sudden he's like Mr. Evil Man and he's completely changed his mind about what he's doing here. And he's leading people in a path and they're starting to reveal things about like his bloodline and all this other stuff. And they're just kind of hitting you with all of it. And it was fine, but it's not a lot of breathing room to take in some of this stuff. And it's peppered with action sequences, which were super fun to watch. And so it got me through and I generally understood what was going on. So to me, a 5-star is like a perfect movie that I'm going to go back to and I can't wait to dive into. And I'll go back to this, but I don't know.
I mean, I think in this movie's defense, to not be a 4-hour movie, some things they had to like show you once. Like Lady Jessica is going to start, convincing the Fremen that her son is the Messiah. And we hear her say that's my plan. And then next time we see her, she is there already. So we're not seeing her like go through the motions of doing that. So I do think the movie has to take some shortcuts just so it's not it's already 3 hours long. I also think that this movie is best enjoyed, or this series is best enjoyed, if you look at it as a 6-hour movie. Like it is divided into 2 parts, but it's clearly part 1 is like the first half of a story and part 2 is the second half. Like these are not movies where they don't really exist outside of each other, because if you just watch part 2, you have no idea what's going on. And if you just watch part 1, you're not going to get a complete story.
Yeah, I think I'd also say that like I'm like 90% there with Paul, with the character Timothy Chalamet is playing. But I'm not like there as much as I was with Luke or even Daisy Ridley's character in the new Star Wars sequence. Like by the end of the first film that she was in, I was all in on her character. I understood it. I was ready to root for her. And maybe it's just a difference in the story. You know what I mean? Like there's more gray area with the Paul character, which might actually end up intriguing me longer run than, kind of the basic hero story that some other sci-fi movies present. But basic sometimes works when you're talking about sitting in a dark theater for a few hours. And so maybe this story just needs to be basic a little more for me to be like, okay, first viewing, that's how I feel about it, type of thing.
Sure.
I'm sure when we get into our sci-fi movies, I'm sure a lot of people would look at my list and be like, this dude's basic.
How basic?
You know what I mean? Most of my picks are pretty common sci-fi favorites that anybody can watch. It doesn't matter what age, they'll understand it from the moment one. And it's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that list, but yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge that I think he accomplished in part 2 in making a movie that even people who don't like hard sci-fi can watch. They don't have to understand everything and still enjoy it. That's why it's a 4. Not because the Dune story is all that amazing. You know what I mean? The actual story of what's going on here. It's all not necessarily derivative of other things, but things we've already seen. Just in a very sandy package with Denis Villeneuve putting his touch on it.
I think the story is really interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
I think it's a classic story.
I think it's a classic story because Dune was one of the first to tell it. And a lot of what we see now is derivative of Dune.
So I'm saying
makes Dune look derivative.
That's why I changed the wording from derivative, because I don't think it is derivative. I think other people have stolen from this enough that we've seen it already. And so it feels derivative, even though I understand the source material is not. Same thing with John Connor. Everybody hated John Connor because they're like, it's like all these other movies. Yeah. All those other movies stole from John Connor.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, Zach, you were going to say something, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I guess so we've seen elements of this in other movies, like is he the one or not, in the Matrix, right? But the context of that was so different that it felt fresh again when it's talking about this, because it felt more like, I mentioned how I would love to hear like a Muslim perspective of this film, because I felt like it was so like Mohammed coded a little bit, like with like the rise of Muhammad and like the Sunnis and the Shiites and like these different clans, and like is he the prophet or not, and like all that I thought was so interesting. Yeah, that just felt very fresh to me. The fact that like it's a sci-fi movie without computers, like no one has a computer, it's all just like people that are really good at mental math, I thought that was we just don't see that in sci-fi movies.
Do you know the backstory to why there's no computers?
Yeah.
James, do you want to know the backstory?
Sure.
So like they went, human civilization went down the path of like technology and AI, and then were enslaved by AI for 1,000 years, and then eventually revolted and essentially banned computers. So there are no computers. There's no AI. Essentially, the you saw this more in the first movie, but the people who have like the black line on their lips, they are human computers where they can just do super calculations.
Yeah.
And like it's even cool that Spice is like, people plan they plan these routes like by tripping on Spice, and then they can like see the stars and figure out how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, the reason Spice is so valuable to like the galaxy is because the only way to do interstellar travel is with Spice. And the reason is because it expands your consciousness. And so people like basically fill their helmets and they immerse themselves in Spice, and then they're smart enough to plan intergalactic like routes. Otherwise it would be impossible. So it's not like an energy source. It just makes them smart enough to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. I think some of the ideas in Dune are so cool and unique. And obviously the movie doesn't go into every single one of those, but it's to me it is a different enough story than other sci-fi we've ever seen that I guess I'm really excited to watch these movies. Oh, these aren't even spoilers.
I mean, even if you don't want to talk story specifics, the presentation is different enough to keep me in the loop. I mean, it floated me through most of even the first movie, the presentation alone. You combine that with like well-paced action over the course of 3 hours, and it's like a whole nother movie to me.
I think it's unfortunate that this movie is called Dune Part 2, because it is so good compared to maybe the first one, even that like I just wish it had a name like Dune something, because it's forever just gonna be called Dune Part 2. It just doesn't seem like a fitting name because it is a better movie than the first one.
Agree. What would you call him instead?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Okay.
Volume 2.
Dune Volume 2.
Doesn't do it.
Paul
Dune
finds a
Strikes
Zune
Back.
player in the sand and starts playing it during the
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the AI from the Zoom player takes over.
That's
Yeah.
It'd
It'd probably
all right,
it'd be like Dune Muad'Dib or something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I keep wanting to call the Harkonnens planet like Omega Prime. It's not its name, but
I think it's something like 99B or something.
no, it's
I'll look it up.
Doesn't
ED
matter is what it
something.
doesn't.
No, it does matter. How cool were their fireworks though? Of like bubble fireworks they were setting off.
That's cool.
I thought that visually, I thought that was so neat. Like just these weird, like liquid fireworks that were exploding in the air. I've never seen anything
Does
like that
Geidi
before.
Prime sound right? or
Getty
Getty?
Prime or Getty
Getty
Prime.
Prime.
That's what. Yes, not Omega Prime. Okay, I was on the right track.
All right. Spoiler talk. What do we want to talk about?
One scene I want to talk about is when he like took on the mantle of Messiah
Mm-hmm.
at that meeting.
Yeah.
The council, everyone come and like only someone allowed to speak can speak, and he just ignores that and speaks anyway. And because of this like sacrilege, they're ready to kill him, right? And he just goes full throttle, like way aggressive, right?
Yeah.
A choice that you just would not expect. It seems like the wrong choice to go that aggressive. Even his mom is like whispering to him in her mind, like slow down.
Yep.
And he does not. And it totally works, and I totally bought it. Like the way he goes to people and just says to them things that only they could possibly know, and they instantly recognize that as like this can only be that he's like the true Messiah kind of thing. And it's just so fascinating to me how that plays out.
Zach, do you know what movie that reminded me of?
What?
It's a Jesus movie you recommended to me. I think it's called like the Book of Matthew. It's like a 60s
The
black
Gospel
and
according
white.
to St. Matthew. Yeah.
There we go. The Gospel according to St. Matthew. And that movie like has an aggressive Jesus,
Mhm.
right? You know,
Like
that he's
intense.
yeah. He's not like blessed are the meek. You know, it's very much like this is the way, and I am Jesus, and listen to me. And
Yeah.
that scene reminded me of that portrayal of Jesus.
Oh, totally. And there's a story in the Gospels where he's talking to a woman, and then she is so convinced that he is the Messiah, and she says, "He told me everything about me. Like he knew everything about me."
Mhm.
And like that, like directly parallels the scene where it's like, well, no, how could anyone else know the things that he knows about me?
I really like the Lady Jessica story in this second
Yeah.
movie, where as she kind of takes on the Reverend Mother role, she is spreading the prophecy to, obviously make her son more popular. But does she also, and you help me out here, maybe Zach, you remember, does she also think that her baby is possibly I can't remember the word is, the Messiah also?
Quetzalcoatl Haderach.
Yeah, Quetzalcoatl, yeah.
So she thought it was Paul for the longest time. And then when she had the daughter, I think she switches and thinks it's the daughter instead.
Because in the book, the daughter's born. Like the daughter's like a toddler, right?
Yeah. Well, the daughter will be in the next movie.
But I thought the daughter was in the first book too.
Yeah. But
Okay.
It's like a toddler with adult intelligence.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like she still talk like, so in this movie they have her talking to her
As a
unborn
fetus,
baby. Yeah. In the book, I think she still talks to her toddler, but they have like adult conversations.
Yeah.
I just can't remember. Okay. But yeah, I thought like how they handled her journey was great. I love that character development. And then just like her costuming of like the huge headdress and the veil and
Yeah.
everything. I mean, they definitely the presentation of the first movie I really like. I think this movie cranked up the costuming and like a lot of that production design was. I'm sure they had more money this time around too. So,
And the intensity of like the Milk of Life scene where she becomes the Reverend Mother, I thought was really well handled. Like you felt some stakes, like she might die.
yes,
And It was cool.
Okay, something that maybe you guys could explain to me is
Okay.
the kind of the turning point for the Paul character is when he goes to the pool and he drinks from the whatever. Um, so what? He does some psychedelics, sees his future,
Yeah.
and then becomes a bad guy. But from what I
He doesn't
understand,
become he doesn't become a bad guy.
he kind of does. He's
he
a
doesn't become
conflicted, Messiah character. I would say.
So basically, what happens is
he's bloodline motivated at that point.
sure no well he drinks the poison from the worms,
the water of life, I
And-
think they call it.
yeah, the water of life is what they call it, and it expands his mind so much that he can perfectly see the future. And so
Whereas
basically
before his visions were like
Partial.
Partial.
Right. Not even
Yeah.
partial. They were like what's the word? They weren't exact replicas of the future. They were like shades of
Yeah.
a possible future
Yeah.
type of thing.
yes, and so he was scared of the future back then because he's like, I have these visions where I think billions will die if I take on this mantle, right?
Mhm.
When he actually drinks the water of life and he sees the future perfectly, he knows, okay, 60 billion people across the galaxy will die,
Mhm.
but this is one of the better futures compared to what other futures there could be. So he realizes like this awful future is actually one of the best possible futures that we have moving forward. And so that's why he eagerly goes towards it, because it saves them from like way, way worse outcomes.
But by what we have, it means him and his.
What do you mean?
Like the future, he's headed for that future, even though it's awful for some of his own people. But it's basically to save his family and the Fremen.
No,
it's not necessarily for the bigger universe.
No, it's for the bigger universe.
Better for the galaxy.
Things
Yeah.
get way, way worse for the bigger universe if he doesn't do that. It's not just him. In fact, he makes great personal sacrifice, right? Like, because he marries the Emperor's daughter rather than Chani.
Sure.
So like he's making deep personal sacrifice to do this. But no, it's not just better for the Fremen. I mean, it is better for the Fremen, but like
Mhm.
it's better for the galaxy as a whole, for sure.
So for me as an audience member, is the movie saying at that point that he is the Messiah?
I don't think it is, but maybe I'd wonder how
I mean, if
you
he's
read
not,
it.
then why is he choosing to go that direction? I mean, at that point, is he convinced he's the Messiah?
Yeah.
Well, so again, it's a little unclear. So there's two figures here. There's the person that the Bene Gesserit, those women in black, have been like orchestrating behind the scenes to create for 1,000 years, right? They've been interbreeding people in order to create someone that would have this ability to see the future, right?
And it's
That
called
they
call like the Layard. I can't remember what that is.
yeah, that they could put in place in power, right? That they could control, but they could like have so much power, unbelievable power, right? And so in order to accomplish that, one of the things they did is they planted this false prophecy among the Fremen so that 1,000 years later, they would support this person that they have like bred to be special and think that he's a Messiah so that they would blindly support him, kind of a thing. So like in one sense, there is no Messiah, right? Like there's no like supernatural person. It's just, like they told the Fremen to believe this. The Fremen do as a political move to support Paul. But in the other sense, Paul is the person that the Bene Gesserit have been building towards in some sense, because he's able to do this thing. And so he's more the Bene Gesserit Messiah, and he is legitimately the Fremen Messiah, but he's not actually a Messiah. Like he's not special in any type of like supernatural sense. He's just who he was created to be.
Well, he's also not
Is that
supposed
right,
to
Kyle?
be. Yeah, but he's not supposed to be the Messiah by
Right.
the Bene Gesserit plan, because his mother was supposed to have a daughter who was going to be the mother of the male Messiah.
Right.
And Lady Jessica kind of skipped that step, and she's like, I don't want to be the grandmother to the Messiah. I want to be the mother to the Messiah. So she just had a boy and started trading him. And that's kind of what the first movie was kind of covering, about how like he is not supposed to be this prophet. He was not the Bene Gesserit's plan.
Mhm.
I mean, and this we also see, and again, this felt like a little bit more like setup for next movies. We also saw like the Bene Gesserit visiting the Austin Butler character. So they also have multiple, potential. I'm using Messiah in quotation marks here. They have multiple potential messiahs going on, as like one of these could be the leader that we want to control. So they're kind of playing multiple hands here.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So they don't necessarily know how the future plays out either. They're just aiming in a direction and hedging their bets against the different powers.
They know what the future is. They just don't know when it is, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like their whole plan is like we will move all the pieces to this future, but we don't know when we'll get there.
Yeah. So
Or
we'll keep
who
hedging their
exactly
bets
will bring us there.
constantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're hedging they're playing the Game of Thrones constantly until it works out.
One thing the movie that I don't think it gave me enough background on is just the, witches clan or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And like what their motivation is here other than just being evil looking ladies in black clothes.
It's just power.
You know what I mean? Schemers.
Yeah. They want to control the levers of power.
So that's really the only background they have. Like there's no real reason for this. They're not like secretly good and their ways are bad. They're just like, what's their end game? I'm not sure I understand being right about Paul.
They want power. So they want to control everything. Like they control the emperor right now.
Sure. So they're just power hungry. That's the only explanation we get. There's no bigger reason. They're not serving a bigger master. They're just individuals in a group that want power.
I mean, I feel like power is like a foundational motivation, right? So like any other motivation they have is built on the power. That's a fundamental motivation,
Sure.
of really anyone. So they're not like they don't have a secret guy behind the scenes that's controlling them or anything like that.
Right. Like if I ask you, what does the Shredder want?
Sure.
What does he want?
Yeah. I don't know.
Or like,
Sell
what does
cigarettes?
Emperor Palpatine want?
Right. Like they want world domination.
Sure.
And you
I
ask,
think
Oh, is
why
that
do
it?
they want
Is that
it? It's like, because
There's nothing else going on. He just wants power.
Their
No,
dad
I-
was mean to them when they were kids.
I understand what you're saying, and I would agree that if that's it, that's it. It just kind of felt like as presented as kind of like religious symbols, like de facto nuns for this story or something like that. It felt like maybe they believed in something bigger than just power, and maybe gaining power is how they get there, but that they actually were trying to do a good in the end, even if it's all, wrongly motivated or the execution is actually pretty evil and manipulative. But they don't give you that part of the story. So I thought maybe I had missed that. But you guys are telling me it's all about power and nothing about that. So I'm believing
They're
you.
basically super monks, like that are playing everyone as pawns. Like, so they have.
But why? Why are they doing that? Just for power?
Because
I'll accept.
Well, I think,
but it feels like you might do that if you were like in a religious sect. You might do that because you actually believe what you're doing is right for this reason or that reason. Beyond
I think
just
it's not so
power.
much with them. It's not so much right or wrong. It's that
Mhm.
they are probably peak humans as far as like the galaxy is concerned. Like they have trained themselves to like be able to do these amazing things, and so they're probably peak human. And so they think we are the only ones qualified to make the decisions for the universe. And so they are constantly like maneuvering things to what they think is how they should be. I don't think they're doing it because it's like the righteous thing to do, but maybe like the superior thing to do.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
How do you feel, Kyle?
Yeah. I think they think they know what's best. is the simplest way to put it.
For the most part, they maybe do. I don't know. They have their own agendas.
But they're manipulative.
Oh, super manipulative. And they breed people indiscriminately.
Zach, so I would say like Frank Herbert's talked about Dune being a warning sign of charismatic power.
Sure.
Do you think that Dune is also anti-religious at all?
So I think this movie is anti-religious.
This movie or like the Dune story?
I think probably both. The Dune story, I mean, when you get into the God Emperor, it just gets like, I haven't read those books yet. I've just read up on them.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know per se like the intricacies of like the nuance of that. I think this movie probably is anti-religious. But I really enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah.
Like that it brings to like the religious conversation. You know, the nature. So like one thing that I loved watching in this movie was the reluctant Messiah. So like let's assume he wasn't the Messiah, however you wanted to find that in this world or whatever, okay? He had such a reluctance to take on the mantle, which I saw as such a like a biblical allusion, you know, in the same way that Jesus like absolutely was trying to hold back the storm, you know, like constantly as Jesus was going about his ministry, he would be like, do not tell anyone what I just did. Like he'd do some miracle, he'd heal someone and then say like, tell no one what I did. Because he knew that like if word got out, it would accelerate things to the point where like he wouldn't be able to stop them from like happening, you know, like the dominoes start falling and he's constantly trying to slow things down. And in the same way, this movie was like that. And it just like, it was just cool to see. I mean, so many movies have like Christ figures or like the, you know, that story, like themes and stuff like that, you know, good versus evil and redemption and death and resurrection. All those things are in so many different stories. But this idea of the reluctant Messiah, you just don't see a lot in movies. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them are like gung ho. Like you, like in Star Wars, Luke, like as soon as he gets his powers, he's like, okay, let's go. You know, like I'm not ready yet, but let's fight the Emperor. You know, let's fight Darth Vader. But what I liked about this one is he was like, I see this in me. I can tell this is where things are heading, and I'm not ready to take this on yet. And I thought that was really fun to play out.
Yeah, like he keeps avoiding going south. He's like, if I go south, it's really going to start happening, and I don't want to do that.
Totally. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is like Jesus going to Jerusalem. But ultimately, I think it's pretty cynical about religion. I mean, the whole like him taking the water of life and then like almost dying and then coming back and like it seemed a little cynical to me. But I enjoyed the discourse, I guess.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else?
Any other
Spoilers?
thoughts?
I mean, I was going to do a whole thing about how Star Wars ripped off a bunch of this, but we see it. Maybe not rip off. Was heavily influenced by Dune.
Give me a little bit, because I'm less into Star Wars than you guys, so I see some of the connections with like the Harkonnen stuff, but like what?
Well, I mean, like so just on presentation wise, you have Tatooine, a desert planet, Dune's a desert planet. You have especially with the Empire Strikes Back's got the sandworm. It's not a sandworm, but like there is this. They're in the worm in a meteor, and that kind of chases them out. No, yeah, true. Starlight Path. That's a good point too. Yep, we got a second one.
But
there.
you mean the big worm in the asteroid thing?
Yes, there's that too. Yep. The idea that the Baron is Paul's grandfather. It's like the bad guy. I'm related to the bad guy. So that right there, and then it's hard to say like that. Obviously, Dune didn't come up with the Messiah story, nor did they come up with the hero story, but definitely Dune was, in my knowledge, the first time the hero story was applied to the science fiction genre.
Right.
And then, you know, Lucas kind of. I mean, it's. I'm not trying to say that like, it's art is informed by previous art, right? So I'm not saying that Lucas ripped off Dune. Like he obviously read Dune, wanted to make a movie and took those ideas amongst other things. So it's interesting, James, you said before that like this movie reminded you of Star Wars, and it's like Dune informed Star Wars the movie, then if Star Wars the movie informed Dune the movie. It's sort of this chicken egg situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do you see signs that Star Wars the movie influenced Dune Part 2 the movie?
I think, James, you're saying kind of in the fun presentation of it.
I don't know if it influenced it, but and I don't even know if that's just a natural result of having so much story on the front end of this 2-film package. I don't know if it inspired him, but I think it was a pretty common criticism of the first, and maybe, just maybe,
James,
people got in his ear and said, "Hey, can we make this a little more fun on the second one?" And he probably said, "Already on it." You know
James,
what I mean?
I'm not sure if in this episode you have talked about this movie without referencing the first movie.
Okay.
They're so like combined in your mind.
It's one big story.
No, I get it, but you can talk about Empire Strikes Back without talking about A New Hope.
I've also seen Empire Strikes Back 100 times. I've seen Dune 2 once, and I've seen Dune 1
how about this?
twice.
Kyle can talk about Dune Part 2 without referencing Dune Part 1.
At the beginning of I referenced Dune Part 1. But I can move
Kyle
on from
asked
that
me
now.
if I thought Dune 2, right?
Yeah.
It was inspired by Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's the question.
And
And
you
then you
talked
said
about Dune 1.
and you said, well, he made Dune 1. Like you start with Dune 1 right away.
The only reason I referenced Dune 1 in that situation
Okay.
was to say that even if people didn't say it to him, it was certainly out there that the movie wasn't particularly fun for everyone to watch. People who love hard sci-fi love that movie from beginning to end because they don't care if it has a bunch of action and fun in it. They just want the same freaking story from the book. And that's kind of roughly what he gave them in the first movie. In the second
James,
movie, it was packed with tons of action. That wasn't in the first movie.
What is the fun action in the second movie that you are talking about? Can you give me like 1 or 2 examples of the fun action?
Sure. I mean, there were multiple sequences, but the gladiator sequence was pretty awesome on with Austin Butler taking out kind of the last
Edie
of
Prime.
the Atreides or whatever, the house. And then the sequence where they're at the foot of that crawler was pretty awesome. I mean, there's like constant scenes of them dismantling with lasers from the sides of mountains. There's the actual riding of a sandworm, somebody doing that for the first time. There's a bunch of action in that movie that was fun to watch and spread out over the course of 3 hours.
Cool.
At this moment, I would refer to the first movie, but I'm not going to do that because that bothers you.
Oh, I know you would have. It's just funny. No, I would think all those things would have been in this second movie had no one made any comments about Star Wars. They still would have been in this movie.
Right. That was my whole point. Kyle asked me if I thought Dune 2 was inspired by Star Wars. I don't think directly, no, but certainly Denis Villedune, somebody said to him, can we make the second one a little more fun?
No, James, that's the opposite.
And he
of what I'm saying.
probably already had that in the plan. So no, I don't think Star Wars inspired Dune 2.
Okay.
I think good, fun, sci-fi action movies maybe inspired Dune 2. Not Star Wars specifically.
Not that good, fun sci-fi action movie.
Not Star Wars specifically. Okay. I'm saying like, it's not like somebody said, make it more like Star Wars. Or maybe they did. That would be a good reference point for this. If you were trying to make a good sequel to a movie that maybe some people thought was a little heavy.
James, it sounds like your contention is because the first one didn't have enough of these things, he decided to make this one more fun.
No, I think that was
action.
already in the plan.
Right. So I don't understand why you're saying anything you're saying. Because if it was already in the plan, it didn't matter if people told him these things.
Agreed. Like I said, I think people said these things to him, or he read it in reviews, or he heard the criticism somewhere.
Yeah.
And shrugged it off and said, it's already in the plan. I loaded up the first one with a bunch of front story, and now we get to have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how like stories work too. Like, it's just might just be a fault of the fact that he had to adapt this into 2 movies. Like, well, the first half's gonna be all build up, and the second half's gonna be all payoff. So of course you're gonna have more fun in the second half when you get all that payoff.
I think from what I know about Dune, not having read the original story, probably important to do to actually tell the story of Dune, because it is a dense story from
Right.
my understanding. And so you need evidently 2 hours and 45 minutes of mostly setup in order to understand when the fun gets here fully what's going on. But there's plenty of movies that don't need all that people have fun watching, that have interesting stories, maybe not as dense or full of characters or names you're never going to remember. But I mean, the original Star Wars, if we're going to talk about it, gives you lore in the first movie. It starts in the middle of a story, and yet people can understand it. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying there's a way to tell stories where you don't need 2 hours plus of story in front of it to still have a fun movie.
I mean, I think, and I'm not trying to say this as a slight to Star Wars, because I love Star
Mhm.
Wars, where we did
Sure.
our sci-fi list or something, or doing it. I don't know what's time anymore. You could, I think it's safe to argue that Star Wars looked at Dune and said, "Man, this is dense," and like, what can we trim?
Absolutely.
Again,
And also other
I'm not ragging
stories.
on Lucas at all on that, but
He took like 3 or 4 influences, right?
Yeah.
And heavily cribbed the most fun aspects of those.
Right,
The
exactly.
most easiest to understand aspects of those, and then mashed into a movie that also had amazing visual effects for the time. Stuff that people had never seen before. It was that mix of soup that made it popular to the point where anybody could watch it and understand it from film 1, which starts 4 films in. That's not what they're making here with the Dune series. I get that. But if you're going to make a Dune movie that you want people to have fun watching, but also you want to stick to the story to make the people who are into hard sci-fi happy, you end up with 2 movies. One full of story, and one has the most intriguing part of the story when stuff actually happens, and you load it up with action at the same time. That's what he's done here, in my opinion. I like the second movie much better than the first because of those reasons.
Sure. I still gave the first movie 4 out of 5 stars. I liked the first movie. I thought there was
Yeah.
plenty to enjoy, including action scenes. I mean, there's a whole like invasion, and there's like, air battles, and there's tunnel battles, and it's great.
burning palm trees.
There's some
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I also, there's fun stuff in Dune 1. It's just really spread out. What do you think I gave Dune out of 5 stars?
I'm going to guess like a 2 at the way you talk about it.
I think
Yeah.
you gave it a 3.
I think you gave it a 3.5, to be honest.
I gave Dune 1 a 4.
The
So
exact
you like-
same rating.
James,
You gave-
again, me not understanding that you gave this one Dune Part 2 a 4-star, because you clearly liked it better.
Yeah, you've been crapping on Dune 1 this entire. Like, okay, so here's my question.
I'm not let's
James,
let's rewind a little
be
bit.
honest. Is it at all because so many people are talking so highly about this movie and you just want to like not give it
Dune
too
2?
much cred?
Yeah.
No. I will
So you liked
rewatch
it the
Dune
same
2
as-
and happily move it up. Dune 2 might become a 5-star movie for me.
But right now you like it the same as Dune Part 1.
No. Right now,
give 'em both
I
4
like it the
stars.
same as what I liked Dune Part 1 when I ranked it.
So
I remember that review. You did not like it then. You were so annoyed at it.
It was 2 years ago. I'm probably more annoyed with it now than I was then.
You were annoyed
Um,
then.
Well, you should
You're
look.
like, it's half a story.
I
don't
haven't
get it.
re-listened to what we talked about back then,
Yeah.
but I would love to, because I think I maybe had more negative things to say about it than you guys did, but I don't think I was annoyed by it. If I gave it 4 stars, I was not super annoyed by it. I think these are made by these I mean these 2 Dune movies are made for less of a wide net than your Star Warses of the world. As far as like, I don't think Denis Villeneuve cares if everybody sees Dune. I think he has to get a big enough audience to financially support them. But I think he's more interested in making his version of Dune and staying as faithful to the story as he wants to be, which seems pretty faithful in the end. Faithful enough, at least, for the hardcores. And that's what he's going to continue making. And he hopes that there's enough people out there that don't care or won't be frustrated by a first movie that isn't as exciting as what they're maybe used to with a Marvel movie that's intentionally paced to give you those dopamine hits over the course of a long runtime.
Yeah.
And I think he basically made a Dune Marvel movie in the second one, as far as that goes. The pacing of it, which I appreciated. It might go up over time.
You recently rewatched Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
If you were to re-rank it, what would you give it right now?
I'd probably keep it at a 4.
So doesn't that mean that you like these movies the same? Like you like Dune Part 2 the same as Dune Part 1?
I mean, they're different movies. They're different 4s.
Okay.
but it's one rating scale.
But just help me help it make sense. Like, it just explain the logic to me of you watch both these movies within a week of each other. You give them both a 4-star. It just seems from the way you're talking that you like Dune 2 better. But what am I missing?
The original Dune is a 4-star movie for what it is, not for what it isn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Dune 2 is a 4-star movie for what it isn't. I get it.
No, and Dune 2 is a 4-star movie for what it is. Like if
but you said Dune 1 is a 4-star movie for what it is.
Yeah. They're both. Yes. Anytime I rank a movie, it's whatever the ranking is for what it is, not for what it isn't.
But the idea of ranking is like it's a scale, right? So of course you rank a movie for what it is, but you still have to put it on a scale. They can't all be on the same spot on the scale for what they are.
Sure.
Like,
well, if I was ranking
what it
Dune
is,
movies,
so they're all 2.5.
If I was ranking Dune movies, it would go Dune 2, Dune 1, Lynch's Dune.
Yeah.
Lynch's Dune being number 3.
Yeah,
Right.
but I'm not asking you to put them in order of preference. We are giving them star ratings, and there's only a finite amount of those. And like a 4, again, a 4 could mean different things for different movies. I agree with you on that.
Sure.
But
Totally.
like these movies are pretty like a 4 action movie and a 4 comedy can be 2 different things. Totally get that. But this is like 2 Dune movies. Right. So there's not a lot of daylight between their differences.
I think there is.
In criteria is what I'm trying to say.
I think the first movie is intended to be a palace intrigue drama that has a little bit of action sprinkled in to get people in the front door. And so that's the 4-star for that movie.
So
the second movie is more of an action film that has the resolution of some of that palace intrigue stuff that's set up in the first. And so the 4 stars I gave that movie was against all other movies that might be similarly described.
So what would you
I don't even
Dune
consider the
Part
first
1?
movie an action movie.
Okay.
You do? You think that movie's action first?
Well, I think action is one of the genres of it. There's definitely action in that movie. As Zach said, there are multiple battles throughout that movie. There are people training and fighting.
Battles. I just watched it. It's like shades of battles. There's no full battles in the first one.
There's
movie.
a whole invasion on this the palace.
Yeah, but it's just a bunch of people running around. Mostly.
Yeah, I mean, it's same for the first Star Wars. It's a bunch of people running around. There's no huge battles.
I'm just saying, if you were to compare the two, they don't even compare in the action department. The first one and the second one. Can you give me that as far as like volume of action?
Yeah, but I mean, what about
you're talking about them for what
Empire
they
Strikes
are.
Back? Like volume of action. Empire Strikes Back's got that. It opens with a huge battle right away.
Sure.
The first battle of Empire is bigger than anything in Star Wars.
And if you absolutely need me to tell you which one's better and which one's not, I'll give you a top 3 list of all the Dune movies. I can like Dune 1 4 stars and still like Dune 2 4 stars for totally different reasons.
Okay.
Right?
It just felt like you didn't like Dune 1 at all throughout this entire episode.
No, it's just it's a very different movie, and I don't think Dune 1 it's the first in a sequence of 2 movies. It's all set up.
Okay.
It's very well acted.
It's a
well
good
conceived.
reminder that James's ratings, again, are not, and we've discussed this, are not how much he likes a movie. It's how much he thinks the movie performs at what the movie is trying to be.
Yeah. I mean, I've said as much, I believe.
Yeah, totally. So it's just a reminder of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which I guess I usually don't understand, because for me, my star ratings are how much I like the movie. So it's just a miscommunication, but it's just funny to me.
No, I mean,
that
my
they both
star
have the
rating
same
has
star
that
rating.
mixed in too. I mean, something that is intended to be a movie about Garfield for 8-year-olds. I don't care how well executed it is. I'm probably going to knock it down a few stars because it's probably going to be stupid.
It sounds like it's a 5-star movie to me. It's a movie about Garfield. 8-year-olds love it.
That's why I said, it's not
the
the only reason I would rank something. It's not what Zach described that I've also said on this podcast is
Totally.
an element of my star rating, certainly, but it's not all of it.
It seems like it's all of it for Dune, though.
It's not. If I disliked this movie, it would not have 4 stars. Either of them.
Okay. You said so little positive things about the first Dune.
Yeah, because this type of movie I prefer. Dune 2.
You prefer the action. Okay.
I prefer a movie that is not majority palace intrigue. And I prefer a movie that has a resolution. Okay? But when I rank Dune 1, I rank it for what it is. A movie without a resolution that's mostly palace intrigue. Does it do well at those things? Well, you don't have an ending.
Well, you would say yes. You would say, yeah, absolutely. 4 out of 5 stars.
Right. But also, I don't prefer that movie over what we got in Dune 2.
Sure.
Okay.
It's just whenever you talk about it, you're like, well, yeah, maybe it does. I mean, I don't know. 2.5 stars.
I've given 2001: A Space Odyssey 5 stars, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that movie is particularly fun to watch either, but I respect it. I like elements of it. I think the production design is amazing. The pacing, the story's interesting. There's lots of reasons to like that movie. They're not the same reasons I like Star Wars.
What
also
are the
a 5-star
reasons,
movie.
What are the things that you think that part 1 does 4 out of 5 stars?
This isn't even spoiler chat at this point.
Yeah,
What
this
are we saying?
is getting kind of silly.
What are we saying?
Yeah.
What's
What are the
question?
things you like about part 1, 4 out of 5 stars?
The design of the movie is pretty awesome. I thought Timothée Chalamet at the time, I didn't have much basis for. I just had like the Peach movie, whatever that Call Me by Your Name type of stuff. And so seeing him play a more complex character, I found interesting. The special effects felt very realistic in that movie. And I generally liked most of the setup, the palace intrigue setup, but not having any kind of ending did hurt the movie for me. And without having listened to our original discussion, I'm pretty sure that that's the summary of what I liked about the movie.
My memory of it is you were very bothered by how it ended. That it just
By the
was
fact
like,
that it
stay
didn't
tuned for
have an
part 2.
ending.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Also,
Yeah.
at the time, if you remember, they didn't tell us that there was a part 2. Before
Well, there
the
wasn't
movie
going to
came
be. It got greenlit afterwards.
Yeah, but I
out.
thought it
No.
I
The
thought it was
movie starts. I don't remember if this is true. They didn't advertise the movie as Dune Part 1. They advertised
That's
it as
true.
Dune.
It's true.
That's true.
But
The movie
I
does
think-
start with the part 1.
I think it was, well, it might say Dune Part 1 now. I don't know if when it came out with theater release, if it said Dune Part 1. I'm going to give James the benefit of the doubt on that one.
I think that it did, but
I mean, I will say I thought it was common knowledge. At least I knew going into Dune that it was half the story, and that the idea was if this movie did well, then there would be the rest of the story. Maybe I know that because I'm more connected with like that movie pop culture, or that just wasn't advertised. Because I do think there were people who went into that movie and were like, "Where's the rest of my movie?" But I was not surprised when Dune ended and the movie and the story was not completed, because I knew that this was going to be a part 1, hoping there'd be a part 2.
Yeah. I'm looking for some confirmation on whether it actually said part 1 or not. But I do remember it not being in the marketing, that this was the first half of a 2-part thing that may or may not ever have a second half to it. I mean,
True.
I remember
In the
Denis
marketing, they
Villedune
weren't
being
saying
very clear that
Yeah.
like he wanted to make
True.
a second one, but that nobody had approved it. And yet
true.
on screen, I recall sitting in a theater and having part 1 on the screen.
And yeah,
Yeah, me too.
That I
And then
don't
they
remember if
ended
we
it
did or not.
without an ending.
Yeah.
So if that was all there was, it would have been a movie that never got an ending, in my opinion.
And he found Zendaya finally, the
Yeah.
literal girl of his dreams.
The love of his
Sure.
life.
But if
All
you
right, that was a
really
good
need me
discussion.
to, I'll knock Dune Part 1 down a half star.
No, James,
that make you
don't do
feel
anything
better?
because I said so. No, I just found
I
it
won't.
curious. You do you.
Honestly, I'm surprised I gave it a 4. I'd probably feel more like a 3.5 about it.
I'm
fact-
surprised as well.
In my rewatch star ranking, I'll bump it down. I do think that makes sense. But also, I don't rank movies the way you guys think I rank movies, evidently. So
No, I know how you rank movies. I just in instances like this, it makes less sense to me than in other times. Yeah.
sure. Anything else spoiler about Dune?
No.
No, I don't think I have anything else.
Can we talk real quick about the future of the franchise? So
Sure.
I know there's like 8 million Dune books, but evidently there's a third one, right? That people have actually read. That
A second one.
a second one. Okay, so
Yeah,
what we've
yeah.
seen so far is just Dune,
Yep.
Dune.
and then the next thing is what? Holy
Dune
War?
Messiah.
Dune Messiah. And
Okay,
that's kind of the continuation of the Paul Atreides story.
gotcha. And does it mostly take place on other planets or in space? Kind of seemed like at the end of this movie they're going.
I think
Somewhere
they're going
else.
back to his home planet.
Okay.
If I could be wrong, I've not read Dune Messiah. I'm the same as Zach. I'm familiar with it. I think
Mhm.
Dune Messiah is a time jump also.
Well,
Okay.
it's him and his sister's grown up now.
Right. So it's not a direct sequel. It's like 10 or
Yeah.
15 years after the events of Dune.
For sure. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of palace intrigue of like people trying to assassinate other people and like gain the upper hand and stuff.
Oh, we can spoil it now. We saw his sister Anya Taylor-Joy for a hot
Yeah.
minute in this movie,
Right.
the adult version of her. So
Yeah.
like I'm going to assume if there's a Dune Messiah, it's going to be 15, 20 years in the future, because now you have Anya Taylor-Joy playing what is currently a fetus.
Sure. That would make sense. You'd probably have to, if you were going to make it soon, you'd have to age up. Christopher Chalamet, right?
Christopher Chalamet?
Whatever his name is.
Timothy. Yeah, I don't really know what they're going to do with that. Are they going to I mean, I feel like they would not recast Chalamet and Zendaya and all those people.
Oh, I don't think they would.
So
No, they're far too big to
Right.
recast. I'm just saying they'd have to age him up. If they were to make the movie in the next 3 years, Timothy Chalamet is still going to look like a 20-year-old.
I mean,
You know what I
20-year-olds is that's generous to how young he looks.
I'm saying he'll look like he's in his 20s,
I
not
see
in
what
his
you're saying.
40s, which is what
Yeah,
he would
yeah,
be
yeah.
if his sister was now of age.
Correct. I see what you're saying. Yep.
I mean, he'd probably be in his mid 40s, probably, if she was.
Do you guys know
20.
how old Timothy Chalamet is?
I mean, he's probably like
28?
Yeah, I would say 27. He could be 32. He looks 27, 28. I'm gonna say he could be 32 though.
28.
He's 28. Okay, all right, good.
Born in 1995.
It's adorable.
Scary. I graduated high school the next year.
Yeah, see,
All right,
that's how
should
with
we-
time, James. We keep on aging.
I know.
Should we end the episode?
James, I really hope you call this spoiler chat in YouTube like spoiler chat for Dune, did Star Wars rip this off or something like that? Or
Do you guys want to hear my review for Dune from 2021 on Letterboxd?
Yeah.
yes, please.
It's pretty short. Way better than that other one. Can't wait for part 2. I'm telling you, I think I was not as upset as you guys remember me being about the
No,
first one.
I don't remember you being upset or not. I'm just going. I don't want to relitigate this again. Let's move on.
Yep. All right, that was spoiler chat for Dune 2, Dune: Part 2. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, goodbye.